Okay, Zander, let's go back to last December when you got the news that your show Casual had been nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Comedy Series. How did that feel?
Very surreal. I was asleep. I don't usually get up that early, and I suddenly had about 50 text messages that woke me up. And I had to go take a walk around the block because I had no expectation this would happen. And then I called everyone from the cast and crew, and we were all very excited. And yeah, it was very much a whirlwind. I think we were all just happy that people liked the show. The fact that it got nominated was icing on the cake.
So, where did the idea for this show come from? Take us back to the beginning.
Sure. I was living with my sister for 3 years, and we're very close. We've been very close for a long time. And then she started dating my best friend, and they started dating, and he would sleep over at the apartment sometimes, so I would see him. And ultimately, he decided that was uncomfortable for him. So him and my sister moved out of the apartment. And as a result, I felt like I should write a television series about the three of us, set 10 years in the future, as if I was a bachelor and my sister had just divorced her husband and had moved back in with me. And then we obviously brought in a friend character. So it was a sort of interesting love friendship triangle.
Mm-hmm. So talk about the online dating aspect of it too, because that's a area that's rife for material that I don't think has really been explored yet.
Yeah, I think it's the online dating stuff is obviously sort of new. I think in the last 5 or 10 years, it's really started to take off. There used to be this weird stigma about meeting people online that I think is no longer the case. I have a lot of friends. I know a lot of people who have met their spouses, their boyfriends, girlfriends online. So I felt like it was sort of the new frontier of dating, and it felt like a good place to, just a good way to have a character get into this world. Because I feel like we've seen a lot of dating shows, a lot of shows about love, modern love, all of that. But having the online dating perspective, I thought sort of gave it a real feeling, something that I knew a lot of people have been going through. And I felt like there were a lot of stories. It's how you present yourself online, obviously very different than how you present yourself in a bar or in a restaurant if you just meet someone. And the idea of someone having a persona online versus how they actually are in real life, I thought that was really interesting.
It is. I mean, there's that episode where I think it's the 4th episode of the show where Alex kind of opens up about how he made a profile that was really more truthful about himself and it got no matches, but then as soon as he changes a couple of things, just thousands of matches.
Exactly.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I like that episode. I feel like, there is an obsession right now with sort of culling your online persona and presenting this sort of version of yourself that is the most interesting, living your best life. And in reality, I think, we want people to think that we're happy and doing really well, and it's always sunshine and travels and fun, explorations with friends. And in actuality, our lives aren't necessarily that exciting. I think there are moments like that, but when you have an online profile that's a couple of pictures and a couple of interests, you can present yourself as a certain way that would be appealing to someone who was looking for that in their life. So I like that episode because he does that and then ultimately goes home with somebody who he would never go home with if he was looking at their profile, and has this sort of honest moment with them that wouldn't have really been possible had he just been on his dating app. And I thought that was a nice juxtaposition with how he'd been living presumably for the last 10 years into the first 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm. So talk about creating these characters. I mean, it's such an interesting ragtag group of people with their various dating hang-ups.
They were, a lot of them come from my world. I think Alex and I share a lot of characteristics. I think Valerie shares some characteristics with my sister, but also a lot with the other writers on staff. We have a mostly female writing staff, and they all obviously bring a lot of themselves into the Laura and Valerie characters because, they were all 16-year-old girls once, and a lot of them are married or divorced or dating in their late 30s, early 40s. And it's one of those things that they all bring, their experiences into it. Most of the stories we told in the first season came from the writers and their own stories, and we just took them and sort of used them in our characters. So to me, it always felt like the most real way to tell these stories for these characters was to basically take the writing staff and project them into all of the characters. And that to me felt like the best way to make it real.
Mm-hmm. So talk about finding the right actors for these roles.
Sure. It was, Jason Reitman is, in my opinion, as good at casting roles as you can get. And I think we looked at these characters and they had a very specific voice and a very specific way of talking and a sort of rhythm to them. And we didn't really have a physical template of what they were supposed to look like. We brought in a ton of people to read for every role. And it was just a matter of who understood what they were saying and who really felt like they were believable in those roles. So if you look at Michaela Watkins and Tommy Dewey at first glance, you would never believe those two could be related. Tommy came in, with this light blonde hair, and he's sort of this, he's in amazing shape, and he's like a kind of an athletic type. And Michaela is sort of this kind of beautiful, dark, has this thick, curly, dark hair. And you would think these two could never be related. But ultimately, we felt like their chemistry was so good and they read the roles so well. We sort of had to realize, okay, it doesn't matter if they don't necessarily look alike. We can fix that. They just embody the characters so much. We will work around that. And we did. And I think people now believe them because, after that many episodes, you start to just accept that, okay, they don't look exactly alike, but they act so much like brother and sister that for us, that was all we were trying to get.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you about Jason Reitman. You brought him up. How did he get involved in the project, and what made him the right guy to direct the first 2 episodes?
Well, he was always my dream director for this project. I felt like tonally, he straddles that line between drama and comedy so well in a way that I think a lot of people try, and a lot of people are not able to really get the sort of tonal specificity that he does. So he was the first director we went to, and I waited for 6 months for him to read the project. He was in the middle of making a movie, and my agent and his agent, we share a TV agent, and she said, it's perfect for him, just wait. You'll want him to read it, do not give up. And thankfully I didn't, because he read it ultimately and liked it enough, and we sat down and realized we had a lot in common and saw the characters and the story in the same way. And he gave me some notes, and I did another pass in the script, and then I wrote the second script on spec, and he said, I want to do this one too. And when we had those 2 scripts and he said, I want to do it, we took it out, and we were very much in sync from the start. I think it helps in this sort of thing where there's a specific tone to know that your director and writer are right on the same page. I think that sort of gave us a unifying vision that I think gave the studios and networks, it made them believe that we could pull it off. So having him on board from the start was instrumental. I think nobody makes this show without him. I certainly had very limited experience in television, and he pretty much held my hand and sort of walked me through the gate.
The tone, I think, is really integral to this show. It's straddling the line between comedy and pathos. Was that difficult to do in the writing of it?
I wouldn't say it was difficult necessarily. It's sort of where I naturally gravitate towards. Even the stuff I've written that's dramatic has comedic elements, and the comedic stuff I think is only funny for me if it has grounded, real characters. So I wrote this this script or this television series not knowing if this sort of tone could make it on TV. This was sort of before Transparent had come out, and before Catastrophe, and before Togetherness. And I felt like it was something that I just wanted to do because it felt right to me. And then all these other shows started coming out that had this same tone, this sort of grounded, realistic, comedic and dramatic combination. And I think it's something that we all naturally are able to do. Jason, Helen Estabrook, our other executive producer, and Liz Tigalar and I, we just all sort of fit into this spot. And we tried to make a show that was consistent tonally. I think the show doesn't work if it doesn't have a consistent tone. If it gets broad and goofy, I think you sort of get taken out of the world of the characters. And if it gets too serious and dramatic, I think you might tune out, because it's very much the sort of trials of everyday life. And you look at TV right now, there's so many stories to tell that I think that just as a drama is hard to sustain. So I think it had to have both. It felt like a natural fit for all of us. And I'm very happy with the tone. It's sort of exactly as I would want it to be tonally.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that helps is that, if you're doing this show 10 years ago, it would have been sort of like a multi-cam type thing.
Absolutely.
And you've also able to, with the serialized format of it, you're able to explore a story more in depth, from episode to episode. You can have through lines to it. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. I think, we always saw this series as a serialized series, that every episode is sort of self-contained in that there's a story that hopefully has a bit of an ending at the end, but ultimately every episode is part of a larger piece. It's part of the longer storyline. And I think there are some episodes that are comedic that have a little ending, and there are some episodes that are more dramatic and sort of feed into the greater structure. For us, it was always about the end game of where we're building to at the end of the season. At the end of season 1, it was about this moment in the church after all this horrible stuff has happened for this family, and the 3 main characters together, kind of unsure where to go next, but together in it. And I think building to that was sort of from day one what we were going to do, and the episodes fell in as they sort of did. I think we were not thinking we have to end this episode in this amount of time with this sort of laugh or act break or teaser tag, whatever it is. It was just, let's tell a good story in a 25 to 30 minute chunk. Let's do 10 of those and see where we end up at the end. And what we got is, I think, a nice serialized version of what feels like a 4.5 hour indie movie, I guess, which is sort of what we all wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. So what made Hulu the right network for this show?
Well, I think when we went into it, we didn't have a great idea of what Hulu was doing or what they wanted to do. They were obviously, on the newer side of making original programming, but I think they wanted to be what Netflix and Amazon were starting to become, which is a place for premium streaming content. And they looked at something with Jason where we had the scripts, they knew what the story was going to be. And I think they basically trusted us and said, okay, we're new, you guys are new, but we like what you're doing, we like your vision, let's see what you can put together. So for us, it was a very easy marriage. They've basically given us free reign to do more or less what we want to do. And obviously they support us when we need it, but also if we tell them, hey, this is the story we want to tell, they generally say, okay, if this is what you want to do, this is what you're going to do. So we love having them as partners. Creatively, they're kind of they're the dream network. They seem happy with the show, and they haven't asked us to do anything we don't want to do. So for us, they were the ones who stepped up and said, we'll give you 10 episodes and we'll let you do it the way you want to do it. You can shoot it like an indie movie. You can block shoot it. You can get your people. You can get your camera guys. You can hire the writers you want. And that right there was sort of, there was no way to say no to that. They could have been anyone. And to offer that to us was obvious.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder what were some of your highlights for you from the first season, like episodes that you think really showcased what the show did best.
Sure.
We talked about
I like my favorite episodes. Episode 8 is one of my favorite episodes because it's a Thanksgiving episode that you've seen a Thanksgiving episode done hundreds of times on all the different shows. And I think our version is just strange and dark, and it moves, and it's a true bottle episode that takes place in this one house. And yet it feels like so much is happening, and it's sort of, it has all these twists and turns. That was one of my favorite ones to write. And I ended up having to rewrite that one sort of days before production, and it came together very quickly and organically. So I'm proud of that one. Episode 5, which Sheila Callahan wrote, was one that we had a ton of problems with breaking it. We just sort of didn't get it right the first time, and we wrote a couple drafts that weren't quite there, and then that one fell into place too and became what I think is one of the funniest episodes of the season. And then, of course, the first 2 with Jason and I just writing them kind of together, those are special to me because they were the first things I've ever had produced, and I feel like they were the sort of unadulterated version of the show, distilled down to its very essence right off the top of like, this is what we're going to do, get ready, here's 10 episodes of this. And I feel like those first 2 pretty well captured the spirit of the show. So, every episode has a memory attached to it, but I feel like, those are the ones that really stick out for season 1 for me.
Mm-hmm. You talked about shooting it like an indie movie. I think it's really indicative of where we're at with TV stylistically. I'm wondering, on the sort of budgets that you work on in television, achieving that look and that style, is it difficult or?
Well, I think it is difficult. We have really good producers who get every dollar spent in the right way. We have a DP, John Gulasarian, who moves his lights around and his cameras around faster than anyone I've seen, and is able to achieve this sort of very real, naturalistic look in a kind of incredible time. So being able to do that helps a ton. I think the directors that we've hired, both in season 1 and season 2, all have experience making these low budget indie movies, which are basically the same budget level we're looking at in an episode. So they know you have to shoot 6-7 pages a day, and you have to make your days because there's no money to do anything else. So everyone is on the same page for how to do it. I think, you know, you hire a crew that has experience doing both TV and indie film, and you tell them we're going to do a hybrid version of it. Let's make it look good. Let's make it be grounded and real and have the look of a movie. And they sort of get on board from the start. So, you know, it's the only way I've ever shot anything, and it feels right for the show. It would be hard for me to imagine shooting a sort of cross-covered multicam. I think that would be, I would look at that and think, this looks strange. This looks like a set. This looks overlit. You know, we shoot our show in almost not darkness, but it's a very darkly lit set because we know the cameras pick it all up and our guys can act sort of in this naturalistic way.
Mm-hmm. And are you on the set every day working with the directors, or what is your role during the shooting?
Yes, we read most of the scripts ahead of time. I think we had 8 scripts done before shooting season 1, and we had 10 scripts done before shooting season 2, which I love because it allows me to sit. I'm on set for every take, basically. So, you know, I'm there with the directors and Helen Estabrook, and we sit there and we help them and we sort of make sure the tone and the vision is exactly how we want it to be. And I think it's really difficult, but ultimately rewarding because we know exactly what we're getting. And again, it's hard. The tone is tough. It's really specific, but having our voices there, sort of helping shape it, is really valuable.
Mm-hmm. So now that you've got season 2 coming up, like a month from now, right? Or just a couple of weeks. What can we look forward to in the second season? No need to spoil anything, but
no. I love the second season. We just finished production on Wednesday, and we have cut together the first 10 episodes of 13. I think this season has a lot more going on. We're out of the house more. There's more characters. The world is just expanded, basically. I think we figured out what really worked in season 1, which is, you know, Alex going on adventures and Valerie trying to find her way, and Laura making some strange versions of friendships and relationships. So it's a lot of that. There's a lot of weird crossover. It's a lot of the emotional stuff from season 1 sort of coming out in the surface in season 2. And it's the same fun and sort of zaniness of Alex and Leon going out in the world and Valerie making friends and, you know, having these boyfriends and one-night stands and various people she's meeting. So, you know, it's the same tone as season 1, but I think the stories are bigger and I think the world is expanded in a way that I think really services us because, you know, it's a show about life and they should go out and experience life and be out in it. And we get to shoot in LA, so you might as well go take advantage of what LA has to offer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So lastly, we talked about the Golden Globe nomination. Now we're right in the middle of Emmy season.
Oh, yeah.
What would that kind of recognition mean for you guys to be nominated?
I think it would be amazing. I think none of us have any expectation that it will happen. I think still, you know, there's so many television series out and there's so many good television series out. We just want people to watch the show. And hopefully if they watch it, they respond positively. You can't make these things hoping for awards because you know how hard it is and how specific tastes can sort of line up in a certain way. I think in general, and this speaks to the Golden Globes as well, it's not necessarily the best things that win, but it's the biggest or the ones that are the splashiest with the big names and the sort of big performances. And I think we're all very happy with the size of our show and what we've been able to do. So I hope people appreciate it, and I hope people, you know, consider it for an Emmy. But ultimately, I think we're just happy with the show we've made and that people seem to like it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great show, and congratulations, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.